The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke. While still more people gathered in the crowd, Jesus said to them, "This generation is an evil generation. It seeks a sign, but no sign will be given it except the sign of Jonah. Just as Jonah became a sign to the Ninevites, so will the Son of Man be to this generation. At the judgment, the queen of the south will rise with the men of this generation, and she will condemn them, because she came from the ends of the earth to hear the wisdom of Solomon. And there is something greater than Solomon here. At the judgment, the men of Nineveh will arise with this generation and condemn it, because at the preaching of Jonah they repented, and there is something greater than Jonah here." The Gospel of the Lord. 40 days more, and Nineveh shall be destroyed. That, folks, is a prophetic career. That is the sum total of Jonah's prophecy. If you read the book of Jonah, everything else is stuff that happens to him. You got a hint of it at the beginning of the first reading when we're told that the word of the Lord came to Jonah a second time, which of course provokes the question, what happened the first time? And what happened the first time is the word of the Lord said, "Go to Nineveh." Nineveh, do you know what country that's in today? Hint, it was mostly destroyed by ISIS a few years ago. Northern Iraq. It's on the Tigris River, which is northeast of Israel. Jonah decided he wanted a Spanish vacation instead. So he took off on a boat going the opposite direction on the Mediterranean Sea, which is very much not what God wanted him to do. Then he had his little encounter with the big fish, and then that gets us to where we are today. But Jonah goes to Nineveh only very reluctantly, and what's more, when he preaches that one sentence of prophecy, it worked. We hear today that Nineveh repented. Nineveh was the capital of Assyria. These people had persecuted the people of Israel for a couple of centuries. And yet we're told they repented, and God relented from the punishment he was going to pour out on them, and Jonah was displeased. Indeed, he wanted to commit suicide after all of this. It was actually, the book ends kind of humorously. But in any event, I have a vision, and I'm not sure that this is theologically 100% correct, but allow me a little bit of leeway here. I have a vision that the great saintly prophets are in heaven today, and you've got the prophet Isaiah with his 66 chapters of prophecy, the prophet Jeremiah with his 52 chapters of prophecy, the prophet Ezekiel with his 48 chapters of prophecy, and you've also got you've got Jeremiah bearing all the bruises that he, when he was suffering, getting beaten and getting thrown into the cistern. And then you've got Ezekiel with, he's half shaven after shaving his beard and cutting it up and scattering some of the hairs to the wind. And you've got Isaiah who's just put his clothes on after he was allowed to. If you don't know what I'm talking about, read Isaiah chapter 20. It's really interesting. But and then you've got Jonah who's whining because he got what he wanted, or he got what he prophesied. The people did repent. Isaiah preached, but most people ignored him. Jeremiah preached, but most people ignored him. Ezekiel was already in exile, so it doesn't matter if anybody paid attention to him. Jonah is one of only two prophets to prophesy effectively. That is, get the right response, get the people to do what God wanted them to do. Haggai got the people to build the temple, and Jonah gets the Ninevites to repent. And he's unhappy about it. We're told in our gospel today that Jonah became a sign to the Ninevites, and that this sign calling us to conversion is something that demands an urgent response. For all of us, the word of the Lord is at work in our lives. We come here to Mass, sometimes every day, and we hear the word of the Lord. The word of the Lord appears to us just as it did to the prophets. And yet we have to ask the question, is it bearing effect in our lives, and are we resisting it? Jonah is a great example of resistance. He's also a great example of what God can do even when human beings resist. So today, we ask the Lord for the grace to hear his word and not resist it like Jonah, but instead let it lead us to action. Let it lead us to faith. Let it lead us to conversion, so that our lives may be a sign that leads others to conversion, that we might be the Lord's hands and feet. And as we come to this Eucharist and receive our daily supernatural bread of life, we ask for the grace to be Christ in the world.